Good morning, Year 8. Alright, can I have everyone seated, please, and looking forward? Alright. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so today we're going to be doing some historical source analysis on the Ottoman Empire during the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent. Okay, we're going to be interpreting various historical artifacts and trying to understand their meaning and what picture they paint about Ottoman society during the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent. So before we get started, let's cover what we learned in the last lesson about Suleiman. Okay, so can anyone tell me when did he reign? Okay, yes, between 1520 and 1566. So almost 50 years he was in charge of the Ottoman Empire. What was his reign renowned for? Can anyone remember? Yes, exactly. It was a large military expansion. So under Suleiman, the Ottoman Empire expanded vastly across which continents? Can anyone tell me which 3 continents the Ottoman Empire spanned over? Yes, so we have Europe, yes, Asia, and the last one? Yes, Africa, correct. Just to clarify, which century are we talking about here? So we know his reign is 1520 to 1566. Okay, I'm hearing a lot of 15th century, which makes me think we just need to clarify how the century system works. Okay. Before we begin the activity, just going to clarify which century we're referring to when we say the 16th century, which is the century under which Suleiman was reigning. Okay, so we have the timeline here, and we know Suleiman was reigning from 1520 to 1566. Okay, so this is actually the 16th century. Now, I know this can look confusing because we're using 15, but we're using the 16th century to refer to it. So to explain this, we have a timeline ranging from 0 to 1600 AD. Okay, so the first century from 0 to 100, so that's the first century, 0 to 100, and therefore the second century is 100 to 200. So therefore 121 AD is actually in the second century. Does that make sense? So as you go on, so when you get to 600, so 613 is actually in the 7th century, since 0. So therefore, when you get to the 1500s, you're in the 16th century there has been since 0. Does that make sense to everyone? So now I'd like you to get your workbooks out, please, and begin writing down the learning intention and success criteria of today, as I explained. For today, you'll be learning how to successfully analyze primary sources from the Ottoman Empire using artifacts provided for you. Part of the activity involves collaborating with your peers, so you will also learn how to successfully engage in discussion and comparison of historical interpretations with a partner. So before we move on, does anyone have any questions about the learning intentions and success criteria? Okay, so we have a question there about what interpretation means. Okay, so interpreting or interpretation is explaining the meaning of something using evidence. So when we analyze the artifact, you're interpreting or explaining its purpose and what its role was in Ottoman society to then create a story about what Ottoman life was like during the reign of Suleiman. So the first phase is the individual section. So on your own, you're going to choose an artifact from the Met Museum website, which has a range of historical artifacts from the Ottoman period during Suleiman's reign. So for those of you on your laptops, you're going to copy a picture of the artifact onto your Word document and copy and paste the description of the artifact. For those of you in your workbooks, I want you to write down what artifact you chose and its basic description. And then the third part of the think phase, you're going to use these guiding questions for your own interpretations. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is on your Word documents or in your workbooks is to write down each guiding question one at a time and answer it underneath, and then move on to the next question. And by the end, you'll have all the information available to you to create your own interpretation of what Ottoman society was like, based on the artifact you chose. We're going to move on to the next phase, which is the paired phase of the activity. So now I'd like you to partner up with someone, please. It can be the person next to you. Thank you, thank you. So I want you to share your analysis from the think phase with each other, and then the person listening is writing down their feedback. Remember the 1 plus, 1 minus, and 1 interesting. Okay, once you've shared both of your findings, now we move to the comparison phase. This is where you're going to compare your artifacts, see if there's any similarities or differences, to see if they create a broader picture of Ottoman society under Suleiman's reign. I have some guiding questions on the board for you to follow again. Remember to write them one at a time in your workbooks or on your Word document, and then answer underneath. Okay, year 8s. Okay, pens down, stop typing. Okay, finally for the share phase, you're going to use the findings that you found individually and in your paired phase and share them on the Padlet forum using the link on the slide here. What you're going to do is post a picture of both of your artifacts and then write a short paragraph explaining how together both these artifacts depict Ottoman society. Once you've completed your post, I want you to then comment on another group's post using the same format of 1 plus, 1 minus, and 1 interesting. Video 1, part 2. Before we begin the Think, Pair, Share task, I'm just going to run through an example of analysing a historical artifact. Okay, so now that you've examined the artifact and read its description, we're going to be using some guiding questions to help our historical analysis. Okay, so the first question we have is what is the object? Yeah, so as we can see, it is a shield, specifically a light cavalry shield of Hungary. Okay, so this is a shield that people would wear when on horseback. Okay, so the second question is when and where was it created? So who can tell me when? Yes, of course. So as with most of the artifacts today, they are from the 16th century, so 1500s. Specifically, this one was during the age of Suleiman, so between that 1520 and 1566. Okay, where was it created? Okay, yes, you could say Hungary because it is a Hungarian style shield, but we probably haven't got enough information there to figure out where exactly it's from, but we do know it was a Hungarian style shield, and as we know, under the age of Suleiman, Hungary was adopted by the Ottoman Empire. So what was the artifact used for? Okay, yes, you could call it a military artifact. It could have been used in the military, but what else was this artifact used for? If we just have a look at the description in the second paragraph there. Exactly, tournaments. So this is more of a sports artifact in a way. So this is a bit more of a broad question here. What does it tell us about Ottoman society? Okay, so remember those domains of political, religious, military, or cultural aspects. So is this a political artifact? Probably not, no. And now we've already established it could be it is a military artifact because it is a shield. It is something that soldiers would use during wartime. Now, is it a religious artifact? Does it tell us something about religion under Suleiman's reign? Okay. Yeah, so as it says in the description, the shield is painted with the double-bladed sword of Muhammad, which an Islamic symbol, on the exterior, and on the interior it says there's Christian symbols such as the crucifix. So what does this tell us about Suleiman's reign? Yeah, so because the empire expanded under Suleiman, many Christian territories were taken over, such as Hungary. So you then see a mix of Islamic and Christian symbols. Any other interpretations that you found? Okay, interesting. Good pick up there. So the two symbols might be something to do with the tournament there. So the soldier may have the enemies. So you've got the Islamic. So what else? What other interpretations can you make from this artifact? Yes, good pick up there. So this is a Hungarian style shield, but it's definitely an Ottoman artifact. And as they pointed out, this could be a sign of the Ottoman Empire adopting the military technology from the cultures that they invade to then strengthen their own empire. That's a really good pickup there. Okay, so I just want you to take a couple of minutes to write down these questions and the interpretations that we just went through. Okay, I'll just give you a couple of minutes for that. Okay. Okay, so now it's your turn. You're going to be doing the think, pair, share activity. Okay. So let's begin the think phase. So you're going to choose an artifact using the link there on the screen from the Met Museum. You're going to analyze it following the same process we just worked through, using those guiding questions that I provided to you that you've written in your workbooks. Okay, your 5 minutes is up. Okay, looking forward, listening up. Okay, we're going to move to the pair phase now. So I'd like you to pair up with a partner. Pair up with a partner, probably the person sitting next to you. And you're going to share your findings from the think phase. And then you're going to use the guiding questions that we did in the comparison example to then share. You're going to share your interpretations from the think phase. You're then going to provide feedback to one another, and then you're going to compare the two artifacts to see what more interpretations you can make, okay, using those same guiding questions you wrote down from the example I went through with you. And finally, we have the shared phase. Okay, we're going to take it in turns to share our findings with the class. You're going to write a short paragraph and explain how the two artifacts you've analysed create a picture of what Ottoman society was like under Suleiman. Okay. In video 1 part 1 of the Think, Pair, Share activity, I employed multiple verbal and non-verbal communication strategies to enhance student learning. One verbal communication strategy I use involves setting clear expectations through discussion of learning intentions and success criteria for the formative assessment. As Crichton and McDade note, learning intentions and success criteria can often be used in a tokenistic way, which can lead to student disengagement. Therefore, I allowed time for a discussion of the intentions and criteria to check that students fully understand the expectations of the task before commencing it. I also use the high impact strategy of questioning to promote critical thinking and also autonomous learning from students. As Crichton and McDade state, quote, learners must ultimately be responsible for their learning, end quote. Open questions such as asking what other interpretations have they found enable high achieving students to demonstrate advanced thinking. These open questions combined with peer feedback opportunities create a student-led learning environment that enhances student self-efficacy and motivation. For visual communication, I utilize PowerPoint slides strategically. Unsworth et al. State that PowerPoints can sometimes distract from pedagogies involving student production or targeted feedback. I avoided this danger by dividing the PowerPoint presentation into individual sections for the think, pair, and share phases to allow for student production and student feedback. Furthermore, I use the PowerPoint to demonstrate strategic use of non-verbal gestures such as pointing to direct student attention to essential information. I also used other non-verbal communication strategies Eye contact was maintained with students across the room and directed towards specific students, which Kennedy et al. Identifies as effective because it, quote, holds student attention, end quote. When combined with reassuring nonverbal gestures such as smiles or head nodding, this encourages student participation. I also use the strategy of pausing or wait time after questions, which Marzano states, quote, can lead to greater understanding of expectations and content as students have the time to process or ask questions, end quote. The main focus of the formative assessment was to develop student skills of interpretations through source analysis, which is a fundamental historical skill. To create the task, I followed the understanding by design approach, where Wiggins and McTeague state that, quote, students must have activities and assessments that ask them to interpret inherently ambiguous matters, end quote, moving away from the typical right or wrong answer questions in testing. Historical source analysis is a great assessment task to develop this skill, as there is essentially no right or wrong interpretation, as we cannot fully know what happened 500 years ago. But by using the evidence available, we can make informed decisions backed by historical primary sources as evidence. The Think, Pair, Share task also develops student literacy, specifically in the domain of interacting with texts as outlined in the literacy learning progression. Students interact with historical sources through analysis, and they translate their observations into written historical interpretations based on evidence. The pair phase involves speaking and listening, where students enhance their oral communication skills. And then finally, in the share phase, with the Padlet discussion forum, students develop digital literacy by being able to synthesize their findings into a short paragraph to post on the online discussion forum. The Think, Pair, Share task also develops student numeracy skills, specifically in the domain of sequencing and time, where students engaged with chronology and timeline sequencing to understand which era of the Ottoman Empire they were analyzing. For video 1 part 2, I delivered the Think, Pair, Share activity in an alternate way of communication. I utilized the high impact strategy of worked examples to provide an example to students of how to conduct a source analysis to show them what success looks like, so that they can clearly understand what is expected of them prior to them commencing the task. John Hattie states that for students to successfully achieve the success criteria is to, quote, show them what the end product looks like, end quote. This not only clarifies the learning intentions and success criteria to students, but also provides them with something to strive towards. Therefore, by showing them an end product of what success in the task looks like, it can lead to greater efficiency in learning, but also greater extrinsic motivation from students who are more engaged and motivated to complete the task at the highest possible standard that they can achieve. In conclusion, by implementing multiple communication strategies through clear success criteria, the designing of open questions, using visual resources strategically, and following the understanding by design framework, I was able to create a learning environment where student engagement in learning is maintained through effective verbal and non-verbal communication strategies. The Think, Pair, Share activity incorporates several adjustments to support students with diverse needs and backgrounds. For students with disabilities, the multimodal presentation, combining visual slides, verbal explanations, and physical gestures, creates multiple pathways for students. Carol Ann Tomlinson states that presenting in different modes provides multiple ways for students to access their learning and, quote, generally makes content clearer to more students and learning more durable for all, end quote. For culturally and linguistically diverse students, the activity acknowledges multiple perspectives through the question, what alternative interpretations have you found? This validates diverse cultural interpretations of the historical artifacts. Students from diverse backgrounds, which may have been impacted historically by the Ottoman Empire, might provide an alternate perspective which creates new learning opportunities for all. Therefore, also developing students' intercultural understanding of other students' backgrounds. For students with visual impairments or disabilities that may impact literacy, such as dyslexia, I bolded essential instructions and highlighted key terms on the PowerPoint presentation slides. During the pair phase, I created mixed ability groups, pairing students who require additional support with their higher achieving peers. This peer scaffolding approach benefits both students. The higher achieving students develop more leadership and communication skills, whereas the other students benefit from an alternate mode of delivering the content. The mini lesson clarifying how the 1500s are referred to as the 16th century provides scaffolding for students for developing their numeracy skills. Through explicitly teaching this chronological concept through direct instruction and a visual timeline on the whiteboard, students were able to improve their numeracy skills and fully understand the concept of the century. Tomlinson states that the mini lesson strategy can be effective in targeting content to specific student needs. In this case, students who required further numeracy development or clarification.